I have about 16 pails of wax this year, and I've emptied a number of them already into the melter. And that does two things. It not only melts the wax, but it separates the last dregs of honey from the wax. So this ends up being melter honey. It's slightly darkened, but in the interest of time, I just intentionally do that. I separate it, I melt the wax, separate it, pour off the honey, and I do have a limited market for that to a buyer that can use honey that's just a little bit darker. It's not black, it's not awful, but anyway. So that's what these two pails are here now. These two pails sitting right here. Those are melter honey. So I'm about to pour off some of that right now. It's mostly full of wax now, molten wax. And I'll pour that through a strainer, just a metal strainer. It's not a super coarse thing, just to keep any chunks of slum gum and stuff out of it. So I'll show you how I'm doing that. The wax isn't even 100% melted in there, but most of it is, so I already have good separation. And if you remember your physics, wax is far lighter and less dense than honey, so the honey will go to the bottom, and I can pour that off first. So this is not rocket science. It is hot though, so you have to be careful of that. And this, yeah, it's kind of a messy old strainer, but you know, there's nothing in here that didn't come out of the honey. Of course, the wax often clogs the valve, so it starts pretty slow. So you can see that honey is a little dark, but it's not too bad. It's sometimes this honey comes out of here just a nice caramel flavor. Oh, there's the wax plug, just came out. So the hot honey will kind of melt the wax that's in the strainer, that's clogging the strainer. It gets better over time, melts its way through. I want to get splashed with that. It's hot and it's sticky. Okay, I've gotten all of the honey that'll come out of there. There's a lot of wax that's not melted yet. So I'm going to try to carefully put a few more pails of wax cappings in here. It's very hot and molten wax on top here. So I don't want to splash myself. This gets pretty dicey, pretty dangerous. The pails of wax are in my warming cabinet, and I warm that up to, what have I got it set? I think 47C or something like that. It doesn't really matter. Get it nice and warm. The wax is soft and it comes out of the pail a lot easier. So I'll go grab some of those. Give it a little tap on the side here to loosen it up, and then tip it into there. There's a center post in this melter that helps me rest the pail on. slowly slides out. I think I've got the melter set at 85C currently. Wax melts about 75. Now I think I have it set at 80C. So it's not blisteringly hot. So proportionally, before I had my spinner, I just had a big tank under the uncapper, and that would separate the wax and the honey pretty good because the wax would float, and then I would scoop the wax off the top and put it in these pails. I'd pack it into the pails. It wasn't fluffy, it wasn't loose, so I'd fill these pails up. And all was said and done, when I drained off all the honey from those pails, by volume, half of it was honey. So I'd get 12 to 14 pails of cappings, and so I'd end up with, 6 or 7 pails of honey out of that. And sometimes you can get some of it off without darkening it, but it's a bit difficult, so you'd always darken it. I'd always darken it. Now, with the spinner, out of, I think 16 pails here, I don't expect to get more than 3 pails, maybe 3 and a bit, of honey. So that's a far better ratio, and that's why I don't mind just doing it quickly, darkening the honey a little, because again, I have a market for a limited amount of this stuff, and I can still move it along, and it doesn't just accumulate. So because I'm dealing with the wax and still haven't cut all of the comb honey, I've got the room still at 30C ambient, and so it's not too bad for working in here because I've got the dehumidifier going as well, but it does cost me a lot of money every day keeping this building warm. So that's kind of my driving factor here, is get this building wrapped up. And there's another factor too. My water service to this building is above grade, and the overnight lows are starting to freeze, so I'm starting to lose the ability to have wash water and drains and stuff in here. Well, the drains are okay, but I tap on that and the water comes splashing out of the jacket. So I need to get this all done. Sometimes I wish I lived in a warm climate like I see some people, have water service in their honey house year round, but look at some of the storms you guys are having down south. I don't mind my water freezing up because I can always bury my water line and keep it warm. That's terrible. It's just helpless feeling watching all that on the news. There's terrible, terrible storms happening. This one didn't come out very well. This one I think's got a lot of honey in it, because boy is it ever heavy. It's coming out though. There we go. Nice. Yeah, still a lot of honey. All right, this is the last one. It's only half. It's only half full of wax. There we go. It's packed in there. Quite a bit of honey in this pail too. If you're doing extracting honey to any volume much at all, you'll realize that extracting the honey is the really easy part. Its wax handling is far more difficult and expensive because you end up with a lot of your crop trapped in the wax, or mixed with the wax, I should say. So to separate that takes some pretty expensive machinery. I mean, this melter is a okay solution for doing this, and it costs a lot of money, this melter. I justified it by the return on investment for separating this honey. And while that's true, this melter does a myriad of jobs for me, as you've seen if you've watched my channel. I use it for so many things. Rendering wax, rendering frames, cleaning, queen excluders. This is a big kettle, right? I can clean anything I want in there, really. Anything that'll fit. Okay. Push this down and close the lid. Usually don't like to have things stick to the lid, however, with this, it doesn't stick to the lid, it just melts and then plops back into the tank. Okay, I'll let that cook for the rest of the day. Likely come back this evening and pour off some more honey. And then once that wax is melted, then I'll pour some wax. I poured a little bit the other day. Poured some, I think this was yesterday. I poured this nice, really nice yellow wax. So I'm quite pleased with the way that looks. I usually will pour it twice. I'll pour it once, get most of the slum out of it, and then I'll put water in the tank, bring the water level up, then use the mid tap on the side, and that will give you a much nicer pour. And then I'll let that set in blocks. And I sell quite a bit of it. I keep some of it for my own waxing of frames, etc. So that's all for now. Pick this up again later on when there's something going on. Thanks for watching. So I've been using these little, I don't know what they call them. They're kind of stacking containers. If you put them one way, they nest. If you put them the other way, they sit on top of one another. Kind of nice. One of the really nice things about them is you watch Princess Auto and they're only $3 on sale. So I bought a whack of them a couple of years ago, and I bought another stack of them this past winter. And another really nice thing about them is they're made in Canada. So it's not like you're getting $3 worth of Chinese garbage like we normally get elsewhere. So normally, at least normally in my part of the world, people will pour wax in something like this. So this one's all dirty because I don't use it. And these are very robust. They're the same kind of thing, but they're far more heavy duty. I can't see any markings on this. I got this online, a place called Tenequip. This this was 20 bucks for this tote. Now, what I like about it is it's very robust, and where that comes into play is once you get the wax set, you need to kind of flex it and crack it and whack it on the table or something to get the wax out. Can't very easily break that. I have broken the little black one though, doing that same thing. So I just have to be a little more careful. I think when I broke it, I just kind of broke the handle part or something. But it's $3, so haven't lost very much. And I can still use it, it's just kind of cracked here. So anyway, one of the really nice things about using the smaller one is a smaller brick. And it's just a little easier to handle. And you pour the big brick and you can pour, say, 20 pounds of wax, and it's that thick. Whereas you can pour 20 pounds of wax in this, and you've got a nice brick there, and it's not as huge. Now, getting a larger, thinner brick is easier to break up when you go to use it, but that's not usually a problem for me. Now, when I pour this, this is an initial pour. Generally, I'll pour it twice, but we'll see how it goes. And I've got my good old nasty strainer here. It's kind of a finer strainer on top of a coarser strainer, just to kind of hold it in there. And it's bent, it's out of shape, and it's kind of crappy, but it still works. So we'll go with that. I think I bought that at Bee Supply. So what happens here generally is at the beginning, there's a wax plug in here that when the wax sits in the valve, it cools off and solidifies in there. Now, I'll talk about cooling off. It's starting to cool off in the building because I wanted to keep the temperature up in here a little while until I got everything washed down. And so I've done that now, and I've turned the heat way down. It was at 30 C I was running it here. I've turned it down to 20 C. So let's open this up. And generally I have to take this nasty, this is another really idiotic hive tool. It's got a little tiny hook on the end, and it's really hard to hang on to. They call it an Italian hive tool. I don't know, maybe Italians like that kind of thing, but I don't think it's as nice as a nice Maxent. Anyway, so I need to get that plug out of there. You can see, well, there's still some honey going to come out of this, and that's okay. I can pour honey and wax. Well, there's a lot more honey in there than I was expecting. It's very dark though. I'll put that in a separate pail. And you can pour, like I could pour this and just keep the wax coming and pour it, and then the honey just sits under the wax. I'll take the wax off and then I can get the honey out. However, see, that's wax now. So, once it's cooled, then the honey is kind of thick and it's just harder to deal with. So I'm going to get a separate pail and I'll pour that honey in it. You don't really need to see that, it's just honey pouring, but you're good enough to watch my channel, so I'll show you. Yeah, see, this honey's pretty dark. What I do with my buyer is I'll take a jar of each pail of honey. I'll lot code all these pails. I'll take a jar and I'll give him all these jars, and then he can tell me which ones he wants. And he can kind of give me a price too. I will say that if you warm that honey in the melter to just the right point, you can get some pretty delicious caramel tasting honey out of that melter. I jarred a bunch of it up and I just gave it to my friends. It was so delicious. Okay, so again, we got a little bit of honey, but I don't think we're going to get much. Oh, the wax is coming out fast. I should probably put the other spout on this, maybe. inevitably get wax and honey on the floor. So again, the wax in there is hot, and so it'll pretty quickly melt the wax in the strainer as I pour. So I'll fill these little trays about halfway, and normally I'll do this twice. This is an initial melt, and then I'll clean the melter. I'll get the slum out of it, make it nice and clean, and then put all this wax back in there, melt it again. For lack of a better place, I'll just throw that slum back in the top. So you want to be really careful. It's hot and sticky. If it gets on you, it sticks to you right away. Now, here's the theory behind the mats. This one I poured earlier, and I didn't set it up perfectly because this will be poured again. But I'll set these on these mats, and you can use cardboard. Just that I don't have enough cardboard, so I just employed these mats. And then once I get them laid out, I'll set cardboard on top. And what that does is it helps the wax not cool on the outside of the block too much faster than the inside, because you can see this is cracked. And I can see there's actually honey in this. See? You can see the honey running out from under it. Yeah, so anyway, I'll just put the cardboard on top, and that'll help make a nice brick. Okay, I just rinse and repeat a whole whack of times. There's this much wax in there. It's kind of weird the way it's coming out like that. Very nice yellow wax. Wow, it's beautiful. Really beautiful. And I'm not doing a wax pour in anticipation for selling it to customers or making candles or anything with this wax. This is just kind of a raw product to sell. I either get it rendered, not rendered but filtered, or I'll just sell it as is. It's a messy, sticky job. Everything in beekeeping seems... Oh, that honey, that wax is so beautiful yellow coming out. Wow. I hope the color is showing on the video, because it's just beautiful. I don't know if you can kind of see the color of that. It's gorgeous. And again, my trays are not even spick and span clean, and that's fine. This is an initial pour, and even as a second pour, that really doesn't affect the final product a whole lot. When I'm done, the final brick may have a little skin of impurity on the bottom side, but that's it. It'll be pretty clean. It'll be not really nice. I kind of do this a little differently every year. I either forget what I did last year, or I learn something new, or come up with a new idea. I'm gonna do, I don't know if I can now, but I'm gonna put this spout on if I can, to direct that wax down. Yeah, it's much better. That's what I mean. I forget what I did last year. I forgot that I had actually used the spout. Lots more slum coming out now. Now, it's always amazing to me, you melt what looks like reasonably clean cappings, and then you see the slum that is left. It's really quite disgusting. Maybe I can, a little bit more here. It just gets some slum and it clogs the strainer. Okay, I've got 10 trays there. And I've got a assortment of cardboard sheets here. Got a couple more mats. Throw on here. Hold that down. To me, I always think of this as being two distinct stages. Clean wax and, not clean wax. And I don't mean slum gum and whatnot. What I mean is fit for human consumption wax, meaning honey, and not. So now that I have all of the honey out of here that I'm going to take out of it, now I'm transitioning from that point of clean wax to, less than clean wax. So I can put my big screen in here. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to put this this big screen deal. It's a little bit heavy. It fits right down in there, and what it does is it'll hold all the slum down. Then I'll put some water in it. I'm not going to put a lot of water in it. I'll put enough water in it to make the slum, or to make the wax percolate up through the slum and sit on top. And then I'm going to shut the melter off. When it cools, I'll have a puck of some depth in there around the whole top area of the, on top of the water. Then I can, when that's cool, I can pull that off. It'll have slum on the bottom of it, which I can manually kind of scrape off. Then I can pull the slum out of the melter, clean the melter up a bit, and then put all of the wax I just poured back in it. And then what I do then is I will put a bunch of water in it up. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, there's a mid tap over here. So I'll put water in this up to about an inch below that mid tap. And what that will do is it'll give me water up to the bottom of the wax. And then it'll be a wax band above that. So there's going to be slum that sits on the bottom of the wax and slum that sits on top of the wax. So the band of wax that sits right at that mid tap is where I'll be pulling the wax out for my final pour, and it'll be far cleaner. Now you're always left with that bit of wax that has slum in it at the end, but you can just keep doing that year after year. Put that wax in and redo it again and again. So this is what I have to do. I have to put this thing in there and then get a bit of water in it. And again, I don't have to put lots of water in it this time. Okay, might not look very appetizing, but that's what it is. So I've got about 1.5 inches of water above that screen. And now I'm going to put the lid on this and I'll cook it for a good day. When I come back tomorrow, I'll just shut it off. And then it'll take at least another day to cool. I'll take the lid off to help it cool. This is a very well insulated wax melter, as is the lid. You've seen me lift this lid, it's quite heavy. So even the lid has an insulated portion. It's a good 3/4 of an inch, probably a 1/2 inch of insulation in there. So we'll stick this right up on there. And it's nice, it kind of sits right down on the melter. It's not going to because the big screen is sticking up a little bit, but as it cooks, it'll go down a little bit. All right, so that's the wax for now. This is always a bit of a process in the fall. It takes quite a few days, especially when you wait for this melter to cool off. It takes a long time. It's Sunday, October 13, 2024. Now yesterday I worked ahead a little bit, and you can see that I took the wax that I had poured out of the molds, and you can see the color of it is just beautiful. It came out of the molds quite nicely, minimal crackage and breakage. This one I'd poured earlier, it cracked more, but it looks pretty good. And it looks like overall, when I'm all done with that and what's left here, probably end up with near 200 pounds of wax. But I'll weigh it when I'm done. So yesterday, as I left you last time, I had left the melter off to cool so that I could take the top puck of wax off of that. Now, there was far more wax left in there than I had anticipated, and I didn't put enough water in there as a result. So what happened was the wax puck was actually right down on top of the screen that I put in there. There wasn't enough separation there for my liking, but I did get it out. There was, as you can see here, was 1.5 inches of wax there. I got to it while it was still malleable, so I was able to tear it and fold it and get it to come up out of there. So I put a bunch more wax in there, put another, I don't know, 4 inches of water. I didn't put more wax in, I put more water. So I put about 4 inches more water in there and then turned it up again to melt the wax. And so I've just turned it off actually, and I can see that there's probably another 3/4 of an inch of wax on top, which is perfect. Once that cools, I'll fold that up, take that wax out. Then I need to drain the water, clean the slum out, kind of give it a scrape and get some of the nasty out of there. And then all of this wax, probably this wax will go back in first, and I'll pour that off in my strainer. And then when that's done, then I will have initially strained all the wax. Then I'll put some water back in here, right up to an inch below that mid tap, and then put all of my wax back in here. And then I can pour it off the mid tap, and that'll result in nice clean wax without any special filtering at all. Not as clean as a filtered wax, but very nice clean rendered wax. So that's all I can do at this point. Now this has to cool. The strainer, the screen thing is still in here, although it's starting to float a little bit. It's not floating, the slum is floating, but that's okay. It's well below the wax level. There's nothing to see, it's just dark liquid. And so that'll cool, and then tomorrow, perhaps tomorrow, I can pull that wax out of there and take after the rest. It's Tuesday, October 15, 2024. Sorry, I don't have my tripod handy, but you can see the color of this wax is just beautiful. And I'm going to end up with close to 200 pounds, I think, of wax. Now, I've taken the wax out of this twice. So the first time there was about this much, is about 1.5 inches of wax almost, I think. And so I folded that. As you can see, I got to it while it was still malleable. And I got that out. It was difficult, but I pulled that out. It was right on top of the screen. You can see the pattern of the screen on the wax. So then I put more water. I put a few inches more water, warmed it again, and then let it cool again. And this is what I got. So if I had put another inch of water in there to begin with, I'd have saved myself some work. But suffice it to say, that's out. The melter is not cold, but it's definitely below the melting point of wax. You can see little chips here. So this is kind of a puck. I hope to be able to break this up. This is mostly slum in here. So my challenge now is I need to drain the water that's under the slum and break the slum up and get it out of there. So this is kind of a disgusting job. And I don't have my tripod with me, so I'll spare you the gory details of this. And that's really what I'm going to do here. Nothing too exciting. Okay, I've cleaned out the solid slum out of there, which there was plenty. I used this pail in there, which I had to take 3 trips out and dump it outside. Now I have to heat this up again. I wasn't wanting to heat it up right now, but there's wax in the valve here, so I need to get it hot. Hopefully soften that wax so I can pull it out. Carrie gave me a really good idea. I thought they melt their wax a little differently than I do. They kind of do it ongoing. They don't use their tank the way I do as far as honey goes. So the tank sits, the melter sits right beside the cow and spinner, and they just continuously feed the thing and then pour off bricks of wax as they go, just as a primary pour, kind of what I'm doing here right now. So what she told me, she said, when you're done pouring wax for the day, or at least in her case, when she's done pouring wax for the day, she gets melter wax too, or melter honey. She gets melter honey too. So she said when she's done pouring the wax for the day, she'll dump some melter honey back in there. And I don't know what it would take. It might take a couple gallons, maybe a gallon, maybe 2. The bottom of this thing is sloped very nicely, but of course the valve opening isn't right at the bottom. There's always a little space there. So she pours in some melter honey back into the tank, and of course, being more dense than wax, it goes to the bottom. And while it's all hot, that honey will fill the valve cavity. So next day, her valve cavity is not right full of set up wax. So I thought that was really quite brilliant. I really appreciate that tip. So this has got to heat up again, and then I'm just going to clean there's water and there's still quite a bit of slum, but just small pieces, stuff that'll come out the valve. Pour that out, and then stick this wax back in, melt it, and then I'll bring it out just like I did this wax, and I'll just strain it through my nasty old strainer here to get all the chunks out of it and pour it. Then I'll clean the melter a little bit, just so there's no chunks of slum in there. Then I'll put all this wax back in, a whole bunch of water right up to below this mid tap, and then I'll do a nice mid tap pour off of that. Hopefully I have water service in this building that long, because this is going to take me one more day now. And I think it was -7 last night here, so my water line is froze up now. And I hope it thaws out today. It's about 3 right now outside, so it is above freezing, but it does take a long time even at that, when it's not very far above freezing. It's Thursday, October 17th, 2024. So last I left you with this is I took the thin pucks of wax off the top of the water layer here. And of course, you know, they had a lot of slum in them, and so they're not real clean, or they weren't real clean. So now I can see in here that there's some nice clear wax, but there's a bunch of slum in there as well. And most of the slum has gone to the bottom. Got my nasty wax strainer here. I don't know if this is going to be plugged with solid wax or not. We'll see. I can hear it, so I think we're in good shape. Oh yeah, that looks good. So again, this is really doing exactly the same thing as I did the first time. This is just the wax that was kind of entrapped in the slum. I've picked all the slum out of the tank. I've moved it out, thrown it out in the trees. There's a little bit of a plug there. I'll get a couple of these trays out of here. Just really a little bit came out of that, not much. It's beautiful wax. I think I'm going to get more than 3 trays. And these were weighing, were they 15 pounds or so? It's getting down to the slum layer, so it gets kind of congested. Well, there's not much in there. We'll just get what we can. I should have finished off with the other tray. That's all right. It's gonna go back in there again. I don't know why they don't make equipment with the drain at the bottom so that everything will drain out. Every piece of equipment I run into in this business, the drain is just a little bit above the bottom of the tank. But anyway, so what I could do, put some water in there again, let it cool off, and then I can kind of pull the waxy slum out of there, kind of render it next time. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do here is I'll set this aside, and I'm going to forfeit whatever wax is left in here. There's really not much. There's maybe 1/4 pound. And then I'm going to kind of wash this out, get the other wax over in here. I can fill this with water, because don't forget, I'm losing water service in this building these days, and I need to get this done, or I certainly want to get it done. All right, you can see the melter is pretty clean. It doesn't have to be spick and span for this, because you see any debris there that's floating on the water, that's exactly what I'm going to be separating, and anything that's actually in the wax. So you can see here that I brought the water level up a little closer to the mid tap than an inch. That's probably about 3/4. That's because, you know, I've already strained this wax, and there's very little impurity on the bottom of it now. So I will have that much wax left. I will have from the water to the bottom of the mid tap left when I'm done this, and I'll have to drain that off and strain it with my nasty old strainer again. And that's as good as I'm going to be able to get with that. And that'll be fine, because that'll be the wax I keep for waxing my frames. And it doesn't matter if it's super clean for that purpose. Put the wax back in this melter. Now, I filled it with hot water, and the jacket is running at 80 C, so it's pretty warm. I want to be still a bit careful with that. Honestly, this step is not needed, because this wax is pretty clean already, as you can see. But this will just make it better, right? Better is always better. This will take some time to melt, and by the time this is getting melted, the other wax I just poured will be ready and I can put that in. I suppose there'd be no issue to put that wax that I just poured in there liquid. Just a little weird to handle. Try to pour it out of that tub, but it doesn't all come out. Doesn't matter if it sits up, but it has to go under the lid. It'll go down as it melts. It'll just go right down. I'll likely come back later today before I shut down for the day and put those other 3 bricks in there. Then it'll be ready to pour off here tomorrow. And once I'm done that, I'll be done pouring. It's Friday, October 18th, 2024. And it's final pour day on the wax. So I haven't looked in here yet, but I can see the jacket is running at, it's 79, it's set at 80, so it'll be coming on here pretty soon. And yeah, so all I have to do is set up my trays here and then get to pouring this. I'm really looking forward to getting this pouring done. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little bit of wax in that I had poured out yesterday. It should melt by the time I get down that far. So it's just kind of dark. You can kind of see there color of the wax. There's a few miscellaneous things floating on top. Okay, here we go. And there's wax in the valve, but it'll start coming out faster because the wax coming out will melt the wax in the valve over time. There it comes. I'm gonna try to put quite a bit of wax in these this time because I don't want to pour it again. I don't want to run out of trays. And I think I have just enough trays this time. And you may be noticing that my trays aren't exactly perfectly spotlessly clean. You're right. I'm not really going for a perfectly clean product here. I'm going for a very clean product. I should get 13 trays. I don't remember how many trays I have. Well, I'm filling them a little more than I did before though, so I won't get that many. I've just reached the top of the mid tap, so now impurities that were floating will now come out of the spout, and the pour definitely slows at this point dramatically. That's 10 trays. Now I can just see through the thin layer of wax, I can start to see the slum layer. There's not a lot of it, but there definitely is slum there. So we're right down to the bottom of the mid tap here, and I would estimate there's 3/4 of an inch of wax left. So I have two choices. I can turn it off, let it cool again, and then dig that wax out. That's perfectly fine. Or while it's hot now, I can move back to this tap and strain it just like I did before. And I think I'm going to do that because that'll get a lot of that slum out again. There's no big chunks because this has all been strained once already. So I think I'll do that. This tray is only about half full. And that's fine. That was a pretty good pour. Because this is the 11th tray. So not quite the 11th tray, not quite full. Now the problem with this idea is I've got a ton of water in here. So I need to empty this and fill it and then ferry it to the sink, etc., until I get down to the wax. And I don't want to melt the wax out of my strainer into the water and dump it down the sink. It's not good for the sink, and it's a waste of wax. I'm going to get my spout on here again. This should really come whistling out of here. I often use a 5-gallon pail for this, which is a good thing to use because there's a lot of water here. But I want to use this tray so that when the wax appears, I'll just leave the water under the wax and set it to cool. The key is to not spill this hot water on myself on the way to the sink. You can usually tell by the look of it when I get to the wax, and I can see in here too, but I have a tip for you just to test that if you suspect there's wax on top of the water. A floor drain would be nice for this. We're down to about here. So here's something. I'm sure there's no wax here, but I'll dip this cold hive tool in it. If there's wax, I'll see it. I don't think we have wax yet. You can kind of tell the way it pours, whether it's wax or water, because the viscosity is different. The color's a little different, but that's harder to notice. You can just tell how it comes out of there and how it splashes. And there's no wax there yet. See, I told you a hive tool can do anything. No wax yet. I'm pretty sure I'll get wax this time, so I'm going to employ my strainer. I can kind of see that. No, not really. There's maybe just a touch of wax on there. Maybe I'll just do it this way. I don't want to lose wax, you know. I'll fill it right up. Okay, there's a nice wax layer on that. I'll set that aside. I wish they'd put the exit of tanks at the bottom of the bottom, because there's a couple pounds of wax in here. Okay. You can't see most of them for the table and the pails, but there's I think 13 of those there. And they're going to be probably 18 pounds each. So I think that adds up to well over 200 pounds. So we'll see. When it comes out of there, I'll weigh it. So that brings an end to the wax melting and rendering for this year. That was a really good haul. I often don't get that much wax. I think I had a little bit from leftover. I had a little bit out of the apiary from scrapings from my solar wax melter. But other than that, yeah, it was a really good harvest for wax, which is quite surprising with the amount of foundation that I used this year, which was quite a bit. It's Monday, October 21st, 2024. Now you can see I've worked ahead and released a couple of these trays of wax. This one, these two actually, these were two of the three last trays that I poured. They had the water in them, so they've got a bit of gunk on them. These I'll keep for my waxing of my frames. And this one is one of the others that I poured, and it still has a bit of stuff on the bottom of it. So I'm about to release the rest of these. They did crack a little bit, but you know, what are you going to do? So here we go. Need a very robust surface for this. I find that these boxes work well. Just comes right out. Often it comes right out. So that one is nicer on the bottom. There's still a few flecks in it. Some water in that one. If there's a considerable amount of broken corners, I'll literally melt that again and either keep it or, you know, make another tray at the end. I'm actually surprised how much junk there is still in these. The junk is on the bottom though. You know, that's the bottom 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. So now, what everybody's been waiting for, I'll weigh it. This scale is 150-pound capacity. That's 48.4 pounds. £80. $112.4. $128.8. That's 144.8 pounds. $41.4. So about 186 pounds there. It's a little bit in the melter yet, but that'll be for my own use. So I'm going to use, I don't know, I'll have to weigh this again when I sell it to make sure he gets an accurate weight. Thanks for watching the wax rendering saga. I'll keep probably 50 to 75 pounds of this and then sell it either to customers as filtered or to my customer as just this. So of course I get a premium as filtered, but it's a lot more work and it takes a lot more time. So regardless, he really likes getting my wax, so he gets quite a bit of it. Thanks for watching. Take care and have fun.